And we're ready whenever you are.
Okay. Conneaut City Council for August 24th, 2020 is now in session. Roll call, please.
City Manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Here.
Finance Director, Mr. Williams.
Here.
Law Director, Mr. Smith.
Here.
Council President, Mr. Arcaro.
Present.
Mr. Emery.
Here.
Mr. Gaw.
Here.
Mr. Kozeski.
Here.
Mrs. Ledford.
Here.
Mrs. McVoy.
Here.
Mr. Moiseo.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the
To the
flag
flag
of the
of the United States of America,
to the republic
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
With
with
liberty
liberty
and justice for all.
justice for all.
Okay, move on to approval of the meeting minutes for August 10th, 2020. Are there any alterations or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Mr. Arcaro.
Yes.
Mr. Emery.
Yes.
Mr. Gaw.
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski.
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford.
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy.
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting minutes for August 10th, 2020 have been approved. We do have an awards presentation tonight. And we are Employee of the Month is Bridget Morris from the Municipal Court. Mrs. O'Connell, if you would read the certificate, please.
Certificate of Achievement Employee of the Month. The employee for the month of August is Bridget Morris. Bridget has been employed with the Conneaut Municipal Court since May 1987. During her dedicated 33-year career with the Conneaut Municipal Court, Bridget has acted as the court's only court reporter and as bailiff and chief deputy clerk. She has served under 4 different judges during her tenure, including Judges Tittle, Harris, DeFranco, and Iarocci. In May 2007, Bridget earned the prestigious certification as Registered Court Reporter in the state of Ohio. Bridget retired in May 2020 and has been reemployed by Judge Iarocci on a part-time basis as bailiff and deputy clerk. Bridget's strong work ethic and longtime commitment as the Conneaut Municipal Court and the Conneaut community makes her very well deserving of the Employee of the Month recognition.
Okay, very good. Congratulations to Bridget, and nice to see her back on a part-time basis. Okay, next on the agenda is a special presentation. And tonight we have a special presentation, although in absentia, is a proclamation for Janice Schweitzer from Ashtabula County. And Ms. O'Connell, if you could read the whereases into the record, please.
Yes. Whereas Janice Schweitzer has been employed by Ashtabula County for more than 25 years, serving the county residents, municipalities, and townships in a cooperative and professional manner. Whereas Janice has undertaken whatever job she was asked to do, including planning, solid waste district, community services and grants, liaison with the Ashtabula County Port Authority, airport zoning administrator, and a myriad of other boards and agencies. Pardon me. Whereas as Director of Community Services, Janice helped distribute millions of dollars of CDBG grants and loans and other financial aid to needy communities to fund critical road, sewer, and storm drainage infrastructure, benefiting tens of thousands of residents. Whereas as Director of Solid Waste, she has helped coordinate, fund, and improve disposal of solid waste and innovative recycling programs. Whereas as planning director, Janice has helped the county planning commission and the county townships developing zoning amendments. Whereas Janice has assisted the county in economic development, including purchase and restructuring of Plant C, expansion of Nordic Air and King Luminaire, and various other projects which have brought employment to thousands of county residents. Whereas Janice was a founding member of the County Land Bank and facilitated the Neighborhood Improvement Program, which demolished hundreds of dilapidated and blighted homes across the county. Whereas Janice was the coordinator for the Community Housing Improvement Program, which granted hundreds of thousands of dollars to low-income homeowners for basis repairs to homes. Now, therefore, the Council of the City of Conneaut, Ohio hereby recognizes and honors Janice Soitzer for her professional and unselfish services to Ashtabula County, its municipalities and townships, and particularly to the City of Conneaut for advancing progress, good government, and economic development benefiting all county residents. Witness whereof signed John Arcaro, City of Conneaut President of Council on the 24th day of August, 2020.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hockaday, did you have anything you wanted to add for the record?
No, I just want to say thank you to Janice. It's been a delight working with her over my past decade in Ashtabula County, and the impact that she's had on Ashtabula County is tremendous. A lot of times it's not about dollars for Community X or Community Y within Ashtabula County, but Ashtabula County as a whole. And the amount of dollars that have come to Ashtabula County to assist with public infrastructure, public housing, private housing stock issues is just tremendous. Just in Conneaut in the last 5 years, we've received over $1 million in direct grant assistance through Janice's office and with her assistance, and over $2 million of indirect assistance in just the past 5 years. So she was one of the most competitive and widely respected community development officers in the state of Ohio, and she's going to be missed. So I appreciate council saying thank you, because we owe her a great debt.
Absolutely appreciate all the work she's done. Okay, move on to citizen comments. Does anybody have any citizen comments tonight?
Mr. Arcaro, I have a couple. I received some calls about the grinding or the grinded pavements, especially on broad streets where I guess certain sections have been grounded. So I didn't know if Mr. Hockaday would be able to answer if ODOT was not happy with some of the road conditions or what, but some people were kind of upset because it's new pavement and they saw that it had been grounded.
Okay, that process is known as micro milling. And what I would tell them is drive over to Lake Road, west of us, that they resurfaced last year, or Route 20 in front of the mall, and you'll see the exact same thing. So that micro milling process that they do is they have a specific pavement plane that the paver is to conform to. So if there's high spots or it won't drain water properly, what the case may be, they use that micro milling machine to come in and take those high spots off. I don't disagree with whatever citizen commented. I don't know. It's such a low speed road, that I don't think it looks that great, but that is their standard and it's their specification, not ours. We don't have any say in it. But they do that because they bring this machine in that measures the profile of the road, and if it doesn't conform, it mills it down. So it's not like a typical road milling; it's a much finer grind. But that's the process that they use, and they use it, and it's standard in every ODOT spec book.
Right, so they don't come back later on and then resurface that. It just remains for that purpose. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, drive in front of the mall. Probably a third of the area in front of the mall looks like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and this will look a little bit better. It should heal over a little better. This is not the same type of asphalt that's in front of the mall. This is a a sanded rubberized blend of asphalt so it self heals a little bit better. The only thing that's really disturbing about the look is that asphalt is pure black. And when you grind it, you start to see some of the aggregate that's embedded in the middle, and it doesn't look as good once it's been milled. I totally concur with that. But again, it's ODOT's resurfacing program. We pay for a portion of it. We pay for 20% of that resurfacing cost, and all the sidewalk apron development cost is about $385,000 in this case. But be certain that, ODOT has 100% say over that final product. It will look like that. It'll heal up a little bit, but yeah, that's what their final product looks like, and they do it on absolutely 100% of their projects now.
Okay, thank you.
Pardon?
What time is the council meeting?
We're in process right now.
That was after. Huh? After. Oh.
Okay,
Was there a question from the audience or no? We couldn't hear.
no, he just walked in.
Oh, okay.
Okay, anybody else have any citizen comments? Sir, did you want to address council?
No, I was just trying to.
To observe? To observe?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, move on to communications.
I have no communications this evening.
Okay, does council have any communications?
I have no,
Okay, we'll move on to reports of our administration, beginning with the city manager, Mr. Hockaday.
Thank you, Councilman Arcaro. Two things. Number of meetings with the Conneaut Port Authority recently. We have a couple projects that we're working on collaboratively, so spent quite a bit of time with them. I did also, very interestingly, sit on an OITA webinar, which is the Ohio Information Technology Association. A large portion of the CARES Act funding were withheld by the state of Ohio, and ostensibly they are looking to fund further build out of fiber optic and rural high-speed infrastructure. I've had the opportunity to discuss with Great Wave Communications and others about some of this. But the good news is Conneaut's in an interesting position because we have a largely built out fiber optic network here in Conneaut. And while some portions of it are still under construction, most of the city is actually fibered. The one interesting element of that discussion is most of the funding that the state is setting out there is for construction of new lines. It's not for the connection of people to that line. So I think it's a major blind spot that needs to be further explored by the state. Yes, I could have the world's fastest fiber optic line on of my yard, but it doesn't put internet inside the household. And as we are becoming more reliant upon it as a society at this point, for school, for the business of our public entities and others, it's going to be a recurrent discussion. And certainly we feel fortunate that we have so much infrastructure access to that here in Conneaut. There are many areas within the county that are completely unwired, and they're certainly at a major disadvantage in the present conditions with COVID-19. So I did have an opportunity to talk with Great Wave about a number of issues, how we're going to handle into the future some of our things such as publishing and broadcasting our council meetings as we're doing here tonight. Obviously, we're doing this electronically. It's on a YouTube feed live. People can go to YouTube and just follow our channel and see this live feed right now. You can always follow the Zoom invite instructions on the website. The YouTube feed is embedded in our website. But we also have a rather large segment of users out there that are still watching us vis-a-vis their cable access. So for Great Wave, that household number of households within Conneaut, which we have about 5,000 households, is about 1,000 that have a Great Wave product. Spectrum also has a percentage of households. They don't really communicate with us that strongly, so we're not sure how many houses they serve. But even if it's some number larger than what Great Wave has, it's still less than 50% of the households that we're able to reach with a traditional broadcast public access channel. So one of the things that we've begun with Regis Galvin, who's the cable access, the discussion of how we can move to a better supported stream process than Zoom and what we're doing right now. So we have begun that. I do have a meeting with Cable Advisory Board later on this week, in which we're talking about a number of these issues. And we're hoping here in short order, we'll be able to make some kind of presentation towards council as to what our recommendation would be for a more kind of permanent solution to an internet-based streaming service. Because we know over the course of time, hardwired cable access is just not going to be the preferred method of people accessing this information. So stay posted. We'll continue to involve council in those discussions as well as the Cable Advisory Board. But I did want to share that we've had this discussion. There's also a little bit of impetus that we may be able to use some of the CARES Act money, use that to help us better reach the public and be able to continue to communicate with the public and make sure that what we do as a city council is open and transparent and accessible. I did want to share with you, and I did attach a CCAO, which is the County Commissioners Association of Ohio, that they approved some additional share of CARES Act funding. Right now, the CARES Act funding is going to be additional to what the city's already received, but it's still going to follow the House Bill 481 that labeled the restrictions on it. Part of that restriction is it has to be encumbered no later than October 15th and expended no later than December 15th. Does shine a little bit of hope and anticipating a broader conversation around extending those unused funds a little bit, but we will see what happens. That will require congressional and state legislative action for that to happen. But know that the initial allocation that we received from the state may go up slightly based on that additional appropriation. So that announcement rolled out today. Beyond that, the OPWC Middle and Chestnut paving, I'm still waiting. The additional work for in front of the schools has been drawn. It has been given to the contractor, and that contractor is going to be giving us some pricing on a change order for that, and I anticipate that by the end of this week. The sewer interceptor cleaning is actually underway. And they're about a third of the way done and cleaning and removing. We already got a lot of grit and debris, and we found a few root obstructions of that line, but we have not found any major issues with that line thus far. So obviously we got quite a ways to go, but it's going very well at this point. We talked a little bit about ODOT, Broad Street and Lake Road and the profile grinding. We still anticipate that they're going to do the manhole adjustments in earnest here starting in the middle of September. So, I just remind people that, the specifications under which they do that are controlled exclusively by ODOT, and that's why they did that pavement planning and microservicing. Started our second round of dust control down south. Unfortunately, us, the rest of the county got a very nice rain shower over the weekend, and Conneaut did not. So they are working on southern streets, getting some additional dust control applied. I would encourage people, if you have questions, contact the Public Works Department directly. They should be able to tell you what roads they're working on and what those timing issues will be. If you see an issue or you need an issue resolved, please reach out directly to the Public Works Department, 593-7430. So we do still have some work that is prepped and slated to start on a culvert west of Salisbury, down over the hill here probably in the next week in the Public Works Department. And the Water Department did have a semi-significant break right there by, what is that? It's not coming to me off the top of my head.
Mill Lake.
Yeah, Harbor and Park. At the intersection of Harbor and Park, we had a relatively significant waterline break. So there might be additional investigative work because we're seeing some other issues in that intersection. So I know Brian and his crew will be dealing with that. So if anybody gets any calls about that, just be aware of that. And that's all I really have for tonight. Kind of a short report. If there are any questions, I'll leave it until our next work session.
Mr. Rocket, I have a couple. If you could just let people know what happened in Mill Lake as well, because the road was cut up there.
Yeah, we had a valve there where the bonnet came loose on the valve, and it did pop it, unfortunately. And that is part of the problem with any surfaced road is they brought in a milling machine and they really shook the ground very hard. Unfortunately, that valve failed after the fact, and they did have to cut the road to replace the valve. So there will be a minor patch there. Most waterline or subsurface utility breaks occur 12 to 18 months after the surfacing of a road. So anytime you have older infrastructure, this was simply a resurfacing, not a full reconstruction. So sometimes we do have issues like that. And it's always upsetting to see a freshly paved road have to have a patch put on it, but we'll make sure that they get a nice patch back on it. So it's as consistent as can be.
And that hydrant right there.
Yes, so the hydrant that's there, we're going to try and relocate that to an adjoining street so we don't have to go out into Lake Road. And there's some issues, as I just stated, with that. The hydrant that was there did not have a watch valve to begin with. A watch valve is an isolation valve between every hydrant and the main water line. So if a hydrant is knocked by a car or something like that, they can typically operate that isolation valve and then replace the stem and hydrant. That's not the case in this one. They will actually have to go back out to a main. We won't use the one on Lake Road, but we already had problems with that valve. It was not operating as normal, which is why it didn't get replaced right away. It was obviously having some issues. The busted valves or busted stem valves are left in their open position and they just stay. The way it happens, but I talked to Bob West. He's going to work with the fire chief. We'll just pull it off one of the side streets there. It's same.
Okay. And then if you could just repeat once again for the public when the actual contractual completion date is for the Broad Street and Lake Road project.
I believe it's the end of October. I would have to look at it, but it's some time from now because they haven't even done the manhole adjustments. I mean, there's 30 manholes that have to be adjusted. That's going to take several weeks for them to do that. So if there are things that are issues, have people call my office and I'll bring them to the managing engineer for ODOT, who's Jonathan Dutt. Anytime there's been an issue, I try and bring him to his attention, but it's his work site and it's his contract to manage. So if people do have questions or complaints, you can direct that towards my office and I'll make sure that's passed along to Mr. Dutt.
Yeah, just so the public is aware that project is definitely not complete yet. So.
Oh no, yeah, it's not even close to done yet. They have quite a few things to knock off. Where the project would sit right now is It's probably about 95% completion because there are physical components of the job that are not completed. It wouldn't even qualify as substantially complete at this point. So once all the work list items like the manholes are reset, it would then enter a status, which is known as substantially complete. It would go through final inspection, assuming that there are no punch list issues, issued for final payment by ODOT at that point. But I anticipate that well towards the end of the year.
Okay, very good. And then if you could finally just share the good news, safety-wise regarding the Bessemer Crossing on Middle Road.
Oh, yes, we met with ORDC a couple weeks back. That one was selected by the Federal Highway Transportation Administration to receive full gates and signal. Obviously, I think any railroad crossing is vastly superior if it has both lights and a gate. They're just safer. You'd like to think everybody stops and pays attention, but trains win the car on train situation every time. So it's never a good situation for a vehicle. So at some point, it may be about 12 to 18 months from now, they're going to see full signalized gates and lights go in at that intersection. It's a little tricky because there's a small creek tributary as well as a small bridge there, but I think we were able to resolve some of those issues in the field.
Yeah, it's definitely long overdue. It's just unfortunate it takes so long to accomplish. So.
Well, and I would tell people if there are intersections that they're worried about, they can call, they can file a complaint at the PUCO Railroad page. Just Google PUCO Railroad and it'll come up. They can also use third parties like Angels on Track. If there's something that's bad or a nonconformity, or if a view of the rail is just obstructed, if you go to pull up and there's vegetation or whatever, they could call my office or they can file a complaint at that PUCO Railroad. And that happens. And so if somebody sees something that doesn't look right, let us know and we'll make sure it gets cleaned up because we want people to be safe.
Absolutely. Okay, any other questions or comments for the city manager? Okay, if now we'll move on to Finance Director, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. I have no report this evening. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay. Any questions for the Finance Director? Okay, if now we'll move on to the Law Director, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Whoops. Thank you, Mr. Arcaro. Sorry about that. I'll go back to my office the next time. First of all, I took 2 days this past week handling criminal cases for Chris Newcomb, who was on vacation. I think Chris is one of our unsung heroes with the city. The caseload on Monday and Tuesday, particularly Mondays, is impressive. And the police department has been working very busy and they've been performing very well. I think the court's been performing very well. I'm surprised at the amount of probation revocation hearings and other follow-ups that I just haven't seen that much of in the past years. And Chris really puts in a full day, sometimes working from 8 o'clock till 6 o'clock at night because there's just so much going on. The criminal caseload has really gone up considerably. And I think a lot of people deserve credit for that, including Chris and the police department. We are also working on a number of follow-ups with civil cases. There's the property on, I believe, Atkinson. There's 471 Liberty Street, which was a drug house, which has been boarded up now for several months. There's another dilapidated property at 294 Harbor Street that we currently have in front of Common Pleas Court. And we've been working with the property owner at 904 Broad Street to clean up some methamphetamines that were discovered. We are continuing to work on the Key Bank parking lot transaction. We hope to have that completed within the next month. Our office also prepared and filed exemptions for taxes, real estate taxes, for about 10 or 12 city-acquired properties that were acquired during 2019. So I think that's about it, unless other people have other questions or concerns.
Mr. Smith, what was the house on Harbor Street? I didn't catch the number.
Harbor Street was 294 Harbor.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for the law director? Okay, thank you. All right, move on to reports of our standing committees. Does anybody have a committee report? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to liaison reports.
President Arcaro, I have two.
Okay.
So the first one is from the Conneaut Conventions and Visitors Bureau. They met on the 11th, and they are having their annual meeting at Buccia's on Tuesday, September 8th at 5 p.m. You can still register to attend that. This is a really great event because it allows everyone to meet with the business and those who are really the driving factors to our economy here in Conneaut with our tourism. So if you haven't attended, please consider to do so. It's really nice to meet all those hardworking owners of our community and our tourist board. And then the other one I have is actually pretty lengthy. It's from the health department. Their meeting was on the 12th. And on the 12th, we were still working on a pop-up COVID test, but that was finalized with the Ohio Department of Health. So I'm going to just read the press release for everyone to then kind of put out there, and I can share that with everyone on council afterwards. I just kind of finalized it tonight with them. So there's a pop-up COVID test 19 testing site August 31st from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. The testing site is in collaboration with the Ashtabula City Health Department, with the NAACP Ashtabula chapter and State Road Medical Facility. The location will be at Our Lady Peace Parish Community Center, which is located at 1200 East 21st Street in Ashtabula, Ohio. Anyone aged 2 years and older can get a test at no cost. You will have to wear a mask. You will remain in your vehicle. It is a drive-through clinic only. You will be prepared to stop and to be given information to the registration volunteers. No appointments are required. No medical provider order is needed. Quantities will be limited, and testing will be performed and done and processed by the Ohio National Guard. So I will get that out to everyone on council. That is county-wide. And if you want to call the Ohio Department of Health directly, you can do so, or you can call the Ashtabula City Health Department. Those individuals have been fantastic to work with. And the Ohio Department of Health, the number you can call is, of course, 1-800-4ASK-ODH. And that's all I have for reports tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Angel, can you send a copy of that to me as well, and I'll list it on our website?
Yes, sir.
And do you know what the limitation is? You said quantities are limited. Do you know how many it's limited to?
They haven't given us that information. We're hoping to find that out this week. I know Mrs. Arcaro, or Mrs. Ducrow. Geez, I've had too many names in my head. She's been fantastic to work with. So I was going to reach out to her tomorrow to see if they had a number yet.
Okay, anybody else have a liaison report? Okay, I do have a small report from the Port Authority. They did meet this past week, continuing their business as usual. One high point, they are being recognized by the Convention Visitors Bureau on that 8th meeting with an award for their community efforts. So. Okay, that's, anybody else with a liaison report? All right, if not, we'll move on to our ordinances and for tonight. And we have 2 ordinances on the table. The first one being 5520.
Pardon me, an ordinance to close the following streets on October 9th, 2020 from 5:30 PM until 6:15 PM for the purpose of the Conneaut High School Homecoming Parade and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Hockaday, you have any update on that?
There haven't been any changes in the state's policy on it. I think everybody is kind of waiting with bated breath to see kind of what's going to happen here with schools reopening, what our numbers are going to be looking like, and I'm not saying that it's just Nichelle's call. It has to be through the Ohio Department of Health to authorize this specific type of activity. It is listed as a prohibited activity. Did have a conversation with Nichelle today, and I want to put it on everybody's radar, is trick-or-treating. I've started my inquiries about what's going to be allowed, how's it going to be allowed. Obviously, we have some pretty special folks here that do the thing over on Williams Street. That too requires the shutdown of a city street. I know they have reached out to Nichelle about what's allowable and how it'll work, and they're trying to work through some of those preliminary issues. But some of these things are expressly prohibited in the state's orders. So I think even ODH is waiting to see what will happen with the reopening of schools and whether the orders will stay the same or they'll continue to relax. So we'll see is all I can tell you. I feel like that's a terrible answer, but it's the only answer we have right now.
Okay. And then the other ordinance on the table is 56-20.
An ordinance to authorize the use of golf carts and other low-speed motor vehicles and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, and as far as this goes, Mr. Kozeski, I would like to assign that to your committee to investigate and make the recommendations for any alterations or amendments.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, moving on, we have 2 ordinances in second reading. And we'll begin with ordinance 62-20.
An ordinance to amend section 375.04 of the Conneaut Codified Ordinances governing access roads to trails and not declaring an emergency.
Okay, if you recall, that was simply redefining Underage Road, both east and west, to eliminate the crossing there where the development is taking place for Truck World at 7 and Underage. Anybody have any questions or comments on that ordinance? Okay, if not, Mr. Mosio.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 62-20.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 62-20. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Emery.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gaw,
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
Yes.
And Mr. Mosio, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 62-20.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 62-20. Is there a second?
I second,
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gaw,
Yes.
Mr. Kozeski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
yes,
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 62-20 is passed, and based on Mrs. McBoy's recommendations, we will have a couple signs put up both east and west.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, moving on to ordinance 63-20.
An ordinance to amend chapter 179 of the Conneaut Codified Ordinances governing the Cable Television Advisory Board and not declaring it an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Hockaday.
Okay, this ordinance comes forward to address some of the concerns council had about the design of the board. The size of the board was kind of a cleanup issue. We've had several vacant seats for several years, and they haven't filled themselves. It was 11-member board, and I believe this trims it to 9. So that's what we had it. The other item in there is Regis Galvin, who's a contract to the city to provide assistance to the public access, was a public contract in the city that was council reporting rather than manager reporting. So that's being modified here. Obviously, we are going to be making, or hopefully making, some changes here to address kind of some of the new realities and update our technologies and the way we do things, and that'll be a great deal simpler if we make some changes here, so we can make some. Obviously, we're going to do this in discussion with the Cable Advisory Board. We have a meeting scheduled for Wednesday, the 26th, to start engaging on some of these other issues of updating towards a streaming service. I appreciate Regis's efforts, one, to make council chambers a little Zoom friendly so we can have multiple people in one room. We don't have the crossover mic situation. Second thing is I appreciate Regis's effort. We met with Great Wave last week, and we've done some investigation into some streaming capabilities. So hopefully we can get some of these initiatives moving forward in short order. So this is part of that. So that's 6320 in a nutshell.
Okay, any questions or comments regarding ordinance 6320? Okay, if not, Mr. Emery.
I think right now, because the Cable Advisory Board meeting we're going to have with Mr. Huckaday is on Wednesday, I think for now I'd like to move this to a third reading, and I'd like to have that meeting and then decide on this the first council session of September.
Okay, ordinance 63-20 has been moved to a third reading. Okay, we'll move on to our first reading ordinance, which will be ordinance 66-20.
An ordinance to authorize payment to the following contractor in the amount listed in section 1 below pursuant to section 5705.41D1 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring it an emergency.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Thank you. This is a change order in the amount of $5,740.29. Well, the actual change order is $8,531.29, but we had a purchase order for $20,000. So we estimated a little bit high, but there was some additional work that needed done. So this is the amount above that. And we did not have that purchase ordered out to that amount. So in order to comply with the 570541, council will have to authorize this change order.
Okay, and because of that, compliance is the reason for the emergency?
I suppose that's it. I don't
Yes.
know. Who put
Mr.
the
Smith said yes.
in there, but
Well, we probably need to pay the contractor in a timely fashion, would be what I would say. But just to add a little more to what Mr. Williams said, there is the manhole lid cone in first segment had a fracture track in it, and it was starting to expand a little bit, which was causing that manhole to sink in the center of the intersection there. Once they lifted that segment out, there was a fracture in the second segment down. Just so we never had to go back, Brian Bidwell made the judgment call to go ahead and replace that on the spot as well. I concur with his opinion. Once you have something opened up like that, take care of the issue. Even if you think the next piece may be an issue down the road, just take care of it. So he told the contractor to proceed and replace the second segment, which had a minor fracture in it, just to be on the safe side, because we don't want to have to go back. So that's the reason for it. And obviously we went over our purchase order, and I don't think it's an issue in any way. I think we made the right call, and I'd rather just get it done.
Okay, are there any questions or comments regarding ordinance 6620? Hey, if not, I'll entertain a motion to proceed.
I'd like to make a motion to declare ordinance 6620 an emergency.
Okay, there's a motion to declare ordinance 66-20 an emergency. Is there a second?
I second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Ledford.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Hey, Mrs. McVoy, the emergency has been declared.
At this time, I'd like to waive the 3 reading rule on ordinance 66-20.
There's a motion to suspend the 3 reading rule on ordinance 66-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosio.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy, the 3 reading rule has been suspended.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to act on ordinance 66-20.
There's a motion to act on ordinance 66-20. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Goff.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Goff,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McVoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moiseo.
Yes.
The ordinance 66-20 is passed. Move on to unfinished and old business. Hearing none, move on to miscellaneous business.
I have some, Mr. Arcaro.
Mr. Goff?
I would like to thank Mr. and Mrs. Kimmel and Mr. and Mrs. Rose and Mr. Glenn Turner for all the time they spent helping revive Melick Park. And I would like to congratulate Rachel Myers, daughter of Keith and Sherry Myers, for being crowned Fair Queen, Junior Fair Queen at the Asheville County Junior Fair. And the final thing, I would like to invite Rebecca Gaw and Mindy Knott for attendance at the next work session when the bed and breakfast ordinance is on the agenda. Is that correct? The Planning Commission has worked diligently on this ordinance for the last more than a few years.
Okay.
That way we can, if you have questions, maybe they can answer them quicker.
Very good.
Thank you.
Anyone else for miscellaneous business?
I just, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would just like to congratulate Salty's Butcher Shop on a successful opening and ribbon cutting this weekend. I encourage everyone to go check it out, and I'm happy to have another business open up in our community.
Absolutely. Mr. Mosio?
Oh, exactly. Myself and Mrs. McVoy were at the ribbon cutting on Saturday, and I wanted to say congratulations. And it's very good food. I can attest to that. So.
Okay. Anybody else for miscellaneous business? Yeah, I just have one thing. I would just like to remind the public that the bike lane is now in on Broad Street from Jackson to Park Avenue. Signs have been posted. So there's now no parking on the east side of Broad Street from April 1st to November 1st. And hopefully everybody will enjoy the new bike lane and keep the bikers safe on Broad Street. Okay, if there's no other miscellaneous business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Mrs. McBoyd.
Mr. Arcaro,
Yes.
Mr. Emery,
Yes.
Mr. Gah,
Yes.
Mr. Kozowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Ledford,
Yes.
Mrs. McBoy,
Yes.
Mr. Moisia.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting for August 24th is adjourned.